I thought my executive functioning was great. I was wrong. You might be too, so let me clarify. Hello, my name is Amelia Nagoski. I am co-author of a New York Times best-selling book about stress management, and what I'm going to talk about today is not in that book. But underpinning everything in that book is a reliance on a thing that is a problem for people with autism, especially if you have autism and ADHD, or even if you just have ADHD. I'm talking about executive functioning. So let's define what executive functioning is real quick. If you Google it, you'll discover that it's a cognitive capability that develops as you grow up. Infants are not capable of executive functioning, not even neurotypical infants. But as you get older, your capacity for executive functioning increases as your brain develops. For people with neurological differences, it sometimes does not develop as far as it does in typical people. Specifically, we're talking about attention control, working memory of both verbal and nonverbal things like spatial memory, the inhibition and regulation of emotions, problem solving and planning, and motivational regulation. And if you had asked me if I was good at those things, I would have been like, yeah, dude, yeah. I wrote a book. I wrote a dissertation. I completed a doctoral degree and a master's degree. I am good at school. Surely that means I am good with executive functioning. And then I took an executive functioning test and it was like, no. It turns out that research also shows that high intelligence can help compensate for executive functioning. And there is some overlap between intelligence as is measured, and it's a whole separate video to discuss the bullshitness of the idea of intelligence. But, according to the standard as it stands, the kind of thing they call intelligence overlaps some with your capacity for executive functioning, but it's also completely independent. Because there's lots of super smart people who cannot keep track of their stuff. I thought my executive functioning was great. I was wrong. You might be too, so let me clarify. Unfortunately, most of the resources on the internet are written from the perspective of an outsider watching someone with executive functioning trouble. And it would never occur to me that an outsider would see my executive functioning like that, because to me it seemed fine. So the experience of having trouble with executive functioning is if you're always losing stuff, you can never find your keys. Where's my hat? I have 5 pairs of glasses because I can never find my glasses. So I have 5 pairs and they're just scattered around my house of a variety of different prescriptions and a variety of different ages. So at least I have a pair of glasses to wear. Have I tried to come up with systems to keep track of my glasses? Yes, I have. Everyone's just give it a home and put it away in that home every time. I've tried. That I still lose my glasses. I don't know what to tell you. You also might have trouble with executive functioning if you avoid complicated stuff, like a bill arrives in the mail and you know that in order to pay that bill, you're going to have to open that envelope, look at that piece of paper, go to your bank or your checkbook or your online whatever and check all the money. Maybe you'll have to transfer the money from another account. So instead of doing all of that stuff, you just leave the bill right there by the door. And do you deal with it within a month? One of the reasons I thought I was good at executive functioning is because I was luckily born at exactly the right time for online banking to be a brand new thing by the time I became an adult. And I have had my bills on auto pay for 20 years. I was once talking to a therapist. Before I was diagnosed with autism, I was talking to my therapist about how much I hate and avoid email, which is a combination of executive functioning and social interaction. So I dread email. And also sometimes as a feminist who has written down feminist things, I sometimes get emails that are And that does cause me a little anxiety and dread of like what the next email might be. Anyway, she was saying how much she also hates like dealing with paperwork and giving me strategies of how to do it. Like just set aside 10 minutes and do it. Like and then you can reward yourself with doing the thing that you really want to do, which is like zone out and watch a YouTube video or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll try that. And I tried. Man, I'm a good girl. I do what I'm told. I can follow instructions. I tried. It didn't work. Why? Because my cognitive capacity for executive functioning is not the same. You might also have trouble with executive functioning if a deadline approaches and you're like, oh shit, I should have started working on that like at least last week at the very latest. And now it's right, the deadline is right here and I literally just don't have time to do everything that needs to get done. And you end up having to like stay up all night finishing the thing. Like right before it's due. And the reason executive functioning is a barrier to stress management is because dealing with your stress involves doing things. And a lot of the things are complicated tasks that take multiple steps, that take self-awareness, that take, planning when and where and how am I going to get the thing done. So this video is recognizing that executive functioning can be a barrier to burnout prevention and recovery, which we do not do in the book. So that's what executive functioning is and why it's a problem. Let's talk about solutions. As I've already said, intelligence, as it's established and understood by research psychologists, is a way that can help you compensate. But that's not like a thing you have control over. So intelligence alone, not it. What actually works to help compensate for trouble with executive functioning? I think step one, you need to notice, hey, I have trouble with executive functioning. And if you're not sure, if you're like, I think I'm fine with executive functioning, I did too. And then I took one of those executive functioning tests when I was getting diagnosed with autism. Part of the testing was executive functioning testing, and it was a shock to me to find out how low I scored. A shock. So you got to notice, like, okay, I have problems with executive functioning. And then I started, I had a conversation with my husband, like, so you know how I lose my keys all the time? And he was like, yes. You know how I can never find my glasses? And he was like, yes. And it was clear to him that he already knew. So for me, the main thing that I had to learn was to notice when something was happening that was a result of trouble with executive functioning. Because if you notice, then you can deal with it and just be like, oh, okay, this is an executive functioning issue and I gotta compensate for it. And I think there are two then steps you can take once you've noticed. Step one is get explicit instructions. And I'm going to give you a very silly example of, okay, when you get diagnosed with autism, they want a lot of examples from your childhood of things people said to you, patterns that clearly happened. And Emily and I shared a room for most of her life. Emily's my identical twin sister who I shared a room with for most of my life and also ended up writing a book with in, the 20 teens. We had a very messy bedroom, like just clothes covering the floor. Like you couldn't see the floor most of the time. So our I think aunt got us a book called What to Do When Your Mom and Dad Says Clean Your Room. And for years after that, when the room got messy enough that, our mom was just like, don't come out of your room till it's clean. Just do it. We would literally pull out the book and go page by page. That was the way we got our room clean, was with explicit instructions right here, right now. Because just knowing that this is the process, which we certainly understood and knew what the process was, but actually going through the book and following step by step and checking stuff off as we went, that was the way we got that done. Explicit instructions. Nowadays, we have YouTube. There are so many resources of people's ideas about how to get specific things done. It's pretty easy to find. Unfortunately, we also live in a world of so much information that you'll go to look up, how do I do this thing? And you get sucked down a rabbit hole. And there are so many people's ideas of how to do a thing that it's like, which one works for me? Well, you just got to try them. One of them, you'll finally be like, oh, this is how people do this? Okay. And it might not be the one that like most people use, but it's the one that works for you, and great. So, compensating for trouble with executive functioning. Number 1, notice when that is the thing that is your barrier. Step 2, get explicit instructions. And the next option is related, but it's get help. Ask for help. Hey, I need trouble planning how to get this project done. You're neurotypical. Friend, come help me make a plan and set a calendar and even like check in with me and hold me accountable for going step by step. So when it comes to stress management, let's say you have the attention span to read an 80,000 word book with 27 pages of references. That's my book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. We've discovered since publishing the book that people get to the end of the book and they're like, okay, so wait, what do I actually do? So we have written an official workbook. So if you're not worried about like receipts and you just want results, like that's coming out next year. And the good news is there's workbooks for all kinds of stuff, not just stress management. And there are other people's workbooks about how to deal with stress, not just, our kind of like intersectional feminist approach to it. The point of workbooks like this is they do help with people who, have trouble with executive functioning. And don't forget to deal with the stress or worry that comes from realizing that you might need help or support in order to do things that are considered like easy by so many other people. Because the world does seem to say that we all ought to be able to do things the same way. And we all need to conform. We all need to have the same abilities and the same strengths. And if you need help, that means you're broken and weak. Well, no, it just means that, you're a human being who needs help. Because guess what? We all need each other. That, in fact, is the cure for burnout. It's not self-care. The cure for burnout is all of us caring for each other.